Yes.
Okay, so welcome to Beyond the Abstracts, everybody. We are with a new person today. It's Annika Albrecht. Annika, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be here. Before we kind of get started, can you give us a brief introduction to yourself, who you are,
Yes.
kind of set the scene?
Sure, Thomas. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and yeah, and I hope it's going to be interesting for your listeners what I have to say. So a little bit about myself. I have a strong Montessori background, which is, well, you could say it's a a pedagogy that aims at autonomy. And I'm currently working as a head of didactics at a Montessori campus, and we have kids from actually the age of 2 to 16. I'm also an author of educational materials. I wrote one material with Professor Carmen Becker from the Technical University of Braunschweig, and I train teachers and I lecture BA students in EFL didactics at the University of Potsdam. So that's it in a nutshell, what I do.
Wonderful. So I've spoken to a lot of people in the course of having these conversations, but I haven't had anybody that works with younger learners on here. So I was particularly interested in talking to you and learning more about that. So just to kind of start at the beginning, can you give a sense of your background? Like, where did you grow up?
Okay, where did I grow up? Well, I grew up in Germany and in the center, which in Göttingen, and it's in a family that we really traveled extensively, and that kind of had a profound impact and on I think my biography, and also for the appreciation for different cultures that I got. My mother learned several languages, but as an adult, actually, I think she had English at school. She was born in 1944, but then French and Spanish and Finnish she learned as an adult. So we had like always these, it was very foreign language focused, our family life. And I guess, that kind of, made me or gave me this fascination for foreign languages. And now I've been living in Berlin, Germany since 1996. It's been a long time. And I've been there for all of these years. And that's also very inspirational because now that's a bigger city, of course, than the hometown I'm from.
Okay.
And also very multicultural and everything. Yeah.
These early experiences are so important, of course. And you talked about moving around a lot and being exposed to lots of different languages. How about your time at school? What was that like?
Okay. I think I started kindergarten because that is when you always ask yourself, why do I end up in autonomous language learning, acquisition, teaching, whatever you want to call it. And already in kindergarten, I had this strong desire for independence or autonomy. So I would I went in through the front door, and when there was nothing offered that I found interesting or spoke to the self of me as a little kid, I would just sneak out. There was a hole in the fence in the back of the kindergarten. So I just sneaked out, and then I would just, walk around the neighborhood. I went to neighbors who would bake with me, or I just, with my cat, I strolled around. And my mother just recently actually told me that then she got a call from the kindergartners, and they said they just cannot take the responsibility anymore, and they had to take me out of kindergarten. So that was the kindergarten. And then school started out fine, because in primary school it's still kind of hands-on learning, tangible, and it's really, they try to, on some parts they try to speak to the little, not speak, but they try to have the lessons in a way that the younger children would react to them also. That they would engage in them. The older you get, or then you move on in your biography, your school biography, and the less they look at that. How do you engage your students? And so I went to the school. It was fine, but I would say I had a couple of nice experiences, nice teachers, and nice learning situations. But a lot of things I learned at home. So I went home and then I learned, for example, English or whatever. It didn't matter. All like different things. They started out at the school, but I would take them further at home and not, I guess, not arriving at where the school wanted me to arrive, but following my own interests. So, yeah,
That's a
that
nice
was
thread.
cool.
That's a nice thread there. And I noticed in your bio that you sent me and that I will have included with this video, your kind of graduate education has a kind of psychological tinge to it. Could you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. So that's kind of that's interesting. For example, as a teenager, I would say I always had two passions in my life, and they started when I was a teenager. And that was like social scientist, psychology, but later I also studied a little bit of sociology and and languages. And so in the end, I did my master's thesis in behavioral and organizational psychology, and it was on autonomy in the workplace. And you can take a lot from that. I mean, a lot of motivation theories actually come from the work sector, and I would say, some of them are, or most of them are kind of universal. You can apply them at school as well. And so, as I said, the other focus in life was foreign languages, especially English, I have to admit. And so I also studied to become an interpreter. And so these kind of, I merged these in the end, these two fields. And I still think it's important to always have psychology in the background as a pedagogue or as a teacher. And that's kind of interesting. I mean, also Montessori wrote, it's not that she gave me this idea, but when you read her text, she also wrote that as a pedagogue, you always have to be interested in the latest research and progression in psychology and also sociology, because it's in the end, you're bringing up the new generation. What you're doing is kind of, it's a political endeavor as a teacher. That's it's not just teaching subjects. It's really raising the new generations that are supposed to responsibly take over one day and bring improvement to the world and develop society and the world. And so yeah.
So you mentioned Montessori there. Actually, that was something I wanted to pick up on. So just for anyone that doesn't know, in a nutshell, what is it and what drew you to that, and kind of what drew you to making that focus of your work life?
Yeah, well, so what is it? So I remember when I entered like a Montessori classroom for the first time, that was, for me, it was a transformative experience. I just told you about my own biography, like school and kindergarten. And then I saw this, this classroom, children moving around, but then also working in groups. It was a primary classroom. They learn in mixed age groups. So 4th, 5th, and 6th grade together, or 9 to 12-year-olds together, like depends on where you are, the grades. But you could see the joy, the willingness in their faces. Like you could see what they do. They do it with the sense of willingness. Like the STT, Lisa and Ryan, you could totally sense that. And they weren't constantly asked questions. They could ask the teachers questions, and they would give them hints as how to find out the answer to these questions. So it's not, you probably remember that too, like you were a little child and you would ask questions all the time. Then you came to school and then the adults like suddenly asked you all of these questions, and you were like, what the heck? Like, I'm the one who needs answers. And so I saw this, and I'm always a little bit embarrassed, but I almost cried because I thought to myself, like pitying myself, it would have been just the perfect school for me as a child. And because, it's like merging these, what you can see there. And of course, that just came later, like really working in the autonomous field of foreign language learning, is you could see how like the personal learning environments, kind of you bring them in the institutional learning environments, they merge. And it's like a holistic kind of learning. It's joy driven. It's in the Montessori realm, you assume, I mean, that's you, like, we all are convinced, like Montessorians are convinced, like every constructivist, I would say, that humans want to learn. That's what they do. They come here, and from the first day on, and maybe already in the womb, they learn, and they have a strive for growth, and you could see that in this classroom. And so then, for just finishing this Montessori talk a little bit, is so in the end, what is the aim is really the autonomous, responsible, let's say, citizen of a society that contributes to society, also is grateful for all the contributions that all the other individuals, hand over to the society, and that's basically, so his history, for example, is a backbone of Montessori pedagogy, because you want the children and adolescents to see and to learn how other generations before them have already contributed, how they have found their little, ways in society, and all of them were important. And let's not talk about the ones who, would consider not be important, but for example, explorers and so forth. And that is looking back. But then, like psychologically, what we would like to bring closer to them with that is that they understand that one day they will also have a task in life, and everyone will have that. Everyone will find their little niche, and that's probably motivating, I guess, because some of us leave school, many, and do not know what they want to contribute or do later on, right? And
no, definitely, I can relate. Yeah. How long have you worked in the Montessori kind of context?
Yeah, almost 20 years. Almost 20 years.
Okay.
19,
So
I guess.
the way you just described it sounds quite idyllic. Really.
Yeah, of course.
What would you say has been a highlight of that time?
Well, you mean it depends on what you consider, being a highlight for myself, from my egocentric self, I would say the highlight.
A success as a teacher, as a leader in this area.
Well, I mean, like little highlight, I would say it's more that I what do you say? I saw so many things, and I was given the chance to observe how humans develop, and that were, I would call that highlights, because this school setting gives you as a teacher the chance to really get to know your learners and to see the characteristics and their needs at different developmental stages. And you don't get that, and you hardly get that in regular schools, because you teach your subject, and there you teach people, humans, human beings. So I would consider that being a highlight throughout the time.
Right. So rather than a kind of time restricted, highlights kind of ongoing benefit of that kind of setup. Yeah. How long do you typically kind of see a learner? How long do you stay with them for?
Typically it's for 3 years.
Okay. So it's a good formative chunk of time there.
Yeah, right. So because you say you have like 3, I mean, you also have the adult, but 3 developmental planes at school. So the first is 0 to 6, and then it's 6 to 12, and 12 to 18 years. And then it's always 3 years, like subplanes, you would call them.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in your introduction that that you do this. You also are a kind of teacher educator and a materials designer, which is your main hat that you put on, if you know what I mean, which is
I don't know.
how do you see yourself mainly, or is it a case of changing them out day by day, or yeah?
Yeah, I really don't know. It depends on what time of day you ask me.
Okay.
In the mornings, Mondays to Wednesdays, I'm at the school. It depends, but then no, because they're like that's great. I mean, all of these different lines of my life, they don't differ that much. I mean, they come together. They think they support each other, so I cannot say it. It's all connected. So
Right.
that's nice. I can't really say it. It depends where, and it's more in which community am I at a specific time of day.
Yes.
Autonomous language learning, or university, or the school, or adult like teacher training. That's where I am, like in the here and now. That's where my identification is at that moment, and all of these it's one identification, I would say.
Okay, yeah, and it's kind of complex, all the different parts of the whole. Yeah, that's for sure. So has that interest kind of developed over time or changed in some way, or that kind of complex identity there, or has it remained pretty constant throughout your career?
No, it's constantly changing. I mean, I would say definitely, because you keep learning, I keep learning all the time. You discover new things. You read new articles. I mean, and then you start combining things with another that you maybe hadn't seen the connection of before.
Yes.
You meet new people. You go to talks. You go you get inspiration from all different strands of life, and then. No, of course. I mean, constant change, but still, maybe if I look back, I would say it's this. What you can see is probably I'm open to experience. For example, that I can think that's what I gather, I would say, and from the progression, when I worked as a translator, I felt lonely, so then I went into teaching, and that was great, and that's why that's what I love. Like, I've really taught 3-year-olds to 16, 17. I never taught 17, 18, 19, like kind of that age, but then university students and adults, and so I've kind of a huge range, and all of this contributed to my own development, because they each and every again, developmental plane teaches you about teaching or about how you do your your role as a teacher, how the role of the student in the classroom. Yeah, and
I liked what you said about being open to new experiences and kind of being curious. It was something I sensed when you gave your kind of biography of your early life as well, right? How do you what advice do you give when you're training teachers, for example, on that point, that developing that openness to new experiences or curiosity?
For themselves or for the students?
Either.
For themselves. It's I mean, it's a bit funny, because you cannot say, okay, you cannot tell them, give them an order to be creative.
No.
But I should be. I tell them that to never lose interest, because when they lose interest in looking for developing their own in their own profession, they will lose interest probably sooner or later. And it totally practically. So yesterday I told the university students, for example, go to bookstores, go on the internet, look at what students do, what are they interested in, what do you find on YouTube, what are the tutorials, what, you like, that's awesome nowadays. You can just go on the internet and kind of do your own research on like what would speak to the learner's selves. And so that is something, and I tell them that once you've become a teacher, you may not stop really looking at research and theories. You have to stay in there, because I know I had a lot of teachers, I would definitely say that they went to uni, and then they thought, and then they had their practical year, and then they thought they were ready and done, and they know everything. Yeah. That's exactly. It's and then I think you also have a responsibility as a teacher to stay motivated, because if you want to have a motivated classroom, you are the spark also,
So it's that kind of infectious nature of your own curiosity or openness that kind of gets translated into the classroom, and
I would say so, yeah, because it opens you up to the other ideas. Right. You can say, if the students offer you something, you can say, well, I mean, this is like, it's not in the curriculum. I'm really sorry. Like, we're not going to do this. If you have if you're closed, not open to these experiences, it helps you a lot, because then you're, I think, more open to take in ideas from the learners. Yeah.
Right. And it sounds like the teaching context that you're in as well is kind of supportive of that curiosity, I guess, on the part of the teachers as well.
Yeah.
Okay. How is that reflected in the materials that you have designed? So one of the things we were going to talk about today is the materials that you developed. It was called the English Language MakerSpace, right? And I'll link to it next to the conversation video. First of all, can you explain the name a little bit, and then we'll come back to the this idea of like, how is the kind of curiosity or openness woven in there. But yeah, so the English Language MakerSpace. So what is it?
It's a material, and I wrote it with Carmen Becker, and it took us a long time. I think 5 or 6 years actually, and we really wanted just a very bare bone structure, so that the self of the learner gets a lot of space in there. Then again, we wanted to publish it with a publishing house, and as we all know, they want material. So it's kind of stuffed with material, great material for the students that it puts them into interactive, communicative situations. They also, I think the makerspace, what's really interesting about it is that we really looked at widening I would say, like the skill variety. So and I think that's, so that was actually that's one thing you will find in it. And I'll just quickly say something to the name. We first wanted to call it, I think it was the project book. Yeah, right. Okay. And then a colleague of Carmen said, it's this, but we had makerspaces in the concept. So the makerspace concept was in our talks, and then a colleague of Carmen said, why don't you call it makerspace learning, or foreign language learning? So yeah, that's okay. That's good. It's a good title, and we still think it is. And the idea was, how do we actively and also holistically engage the learner in their, foreign language learning acquisition process, and also looking at German schools at that moment, thinking that, I mean, we can't really see that.
So is like that something that's lacking at the time? Okay, and anyone that's interested can go online and you can see kind of samples of the units of the student and the teacher materials. And you mentioned it's project based there as well. So how do these learners kind of work through these projects using the materials?
How do they work? It's a 3-stage work cycle. Actually, I think it's a 4-stage work cycle, but we put it into a 3-stage work cycle. So it's you elicit interest in the learners. So you kind of invite them into the project, and they are like from the it's pretty scaffolded as well. So maybe with a video clip. Or with just activities that they do, but they already do that together in a community of practice. It's not the teacher lecturing them. Right. So right from the start, the students are in there, and that's why what you want to get is the connection to the student self, right? You want to, yes. Like if you look at the motivational continuum, you're still probably kind of externally motivated, but you want to put them like slowly connect to it and then move on the continuum towards more or less autonomous or intrinsic motivation, so that they can see the value in the projects themselves. And so, for example, happiness, it starts that they watch a clip and they see what makes other people happy. Then, of course, they go into what makes me happy. Then they delve deeper into that. Then they have the second stage, and they always are woven into each other, these stages, always also scaffolded. But the second is they research themselves, so they find sources that they find interesting, they share them, and then it goes into production, and we call it like they go into the production. They're going to materialize language, their own language, and they produce what they want to say and how they want to say it. And of course, the teacher supports them. And in the end, then they, can come up with any kind of product, like clips, but they can also have, we got so many great products. We got like gallery, like they bought little frames and put pictures in it. We got shoe boxes, and that was also happiness, for example, the project. And this little shoebox was actually a museum, and with little wooden frames on the side, and you could read what makes this student happy. That was actually from adolescent, from secondary school. And then they had put their iPhone and they had filmed something, and you could kind of be in this museum and watch, what makes this student happy. So you get, they're more inventive than we are,
Oh, that's super creative.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah, is that something that you kept in mind when you were designing these materials for younger learners? Like you had to kind of drop them on that kind of personal, immediate level into the project?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so the like the inspiration I got actually, not just me, Carmen too. I got a lot of inspiration from, of course, my students at school, both elementary and secondary, but also my daughter. And she was in elementary school, and then one day she showed me a couple, of English. She's German, and she was not raised bilingually. And then she showed me clips, so my morning routine and tutorials, like they last for 15 minutes, some of them. And then she makes, for example, a little tutorial. She makes a little mug from polymer clay. And then she reproduces this language that she has seen or had seen in these YouTube clips. And you could then, when you look at her biography, you can totally see in which phase she watched more American or more British or whatever. Like she even reproduces, the accent. So that was amazing. Like I was amazed, and that was inspiration. And I could see, again, personal learning environment. She had created it. You could see it all around. She was learning in a safe space. And I think, and that is about the makerspace. That's what makes it special as a material, because in the usually in the EFL classroom, you look at the 4 skills, right? So writing, reading, speaking, and listening, and the English Language MakerSpace. So instead of doing that, narrowing it down, and already excluding a lot of students by doing that. So you do exclude, you know, if they have problems with writing, you exclude these children because they will fail. They're doomed to fail. That's what you don't want. You want every, you know, learner to be successful in their learning. And so instead of keeping it there, what we did is we widened the skill variety, and that's we did that, and then after, you know, a while, I noticed. I mean, that's more or less, you can find it in organizational psychology as well, like Oldham and Hackman. You know, it's the skill variety.
Okay, so I was going to ask then,
Yeah.
like, how did your backgrounds in psychology influence your kind of theorizing when you were developing these materials?
Yeah, exactly. Right. The job characteristics model. So it has the skill variety in it. So they say that, you know, if a worker can apply more skills that are inherent to himself, then he'll be more motivated. And that's kind of logical because they feed into autonomy. Like right away, you're in autonomy when you have more skills that you can use, and they are your own skills. It's not dictated to you, right? You can be more or act more autonomous. And then so what comes with this is, but it's not just the autonomy, and I think that is the important thing. And that's what, again, when you look at SDT, something that's still to be more researched is competence, the importance of perceived competence. So what we have is that the students, they have the knowledge and they have the competence in, let's say, I don't know, maybe cooking. It doesn't matter, some sort of hobby. Or they're good at, like my daughter, you know, at doing these, at the age of 8 or 9, doing these polymer clay things. And so they bring all of these competences and skill to the classroom, but we just ignore them. So what we do is we do not invite like the whole learner to our classroom, the whole being. It's just like compartmentalize this learner into 4 skills and deliver, like have them deliver it, but they bring so much more. And that is kind of what we, after a while, we were like, well, that is really, we think that's really important. And if you look at all of these skills, especially at that age, young age, and also like young learners and teenagers, is that actually all of those skills are means of self-expression, and so is language. And so not just combining them. I mean, it's so logical to do that, to combine them, because whatever they do, you know, if they do gymnastics, that's self-expression, and they can talk about this in the foreign language.
So you said a few times about this widening of the skill set. Can you be specific? Like, what are some of the other kind of skill areas that you're widening to?
Yeah, that we're right. So for example, drawing, you know, we all know these students that draw mangas all the time. And then like these students, I had a couple of them, and they were like, I don't like English, la, la, la. And I said, well, you know, what do you like doing? Well, I like to draw. Okay, what do you like to draw? Mangas. Okay, I like, and you could tell they're really good at it. And then you ask, how about, you know, why don't you just make a tutorial on drawing mangas? Right, or sports, like 1 or 2 or 3 girls, they filmed how they make you know, some skateboard tricks, cooking, I mean, anything, you name it. It's just acting. It can be anything. It can be it just has to be connected to the self of the learner, whatever you do in the foreign language classroom. And that's the most important thing.
I struggle with this as well. I think it's the most important thing is to make the learner the project, actually. Is right. They are the project of the activity, right? Or of the class. Yeah. And but do you ever encounter any resistance to that way of thinking from anyone?
Well, not when they see, I mean, sometimes parents, but you know, okay, I mean, but that's fine. No, but not when they see the outcome.
Okay.
Because it's unbelievable. I mean, like compared to the English we got after school, or I mean, they even get it without school, to be honest. I mean, if they, you know, you can find so many clips on YouTube where, you know, little or young learners wanted to learn maybe how to sing like an opera singer, and then as a byproduct, they just learn speaking English.
Right.
So at school, but also at school, because you scaffold it more at school, of course, and it's more autonomous learning, which, you know, you have the scaffolding in this. And when they see the outcome, actually know. And also what I think is important, that all of these skills, competences that they bring into the classroom and that we let them act out in the classroom, you know, they serve psychologically as a safe ground, because they know they're good at that. And they know they will be successful, even maybe if they're good at cutting films or filming, they will be good at that. Maybe not the language part yet, but human beings have this tendency to want to master things, and also mastering the language. It will come with this vehicle of the competence that they use, and that's just awesome. And so it's good that also for the parents to see that their kids lose anxiety, you know, that they're not afraid of speaking English anymore, that they just speak, for example.
So you're bringing the students' other competencies and interests from outside into the classroom in terms of the materials to themselves. Do they ever kind of run the other way? Are they, in other words, like, are they things that can be continued outside of the classroom themselves?
Yeah, exactly. So that's Carmen and I, we had a talk about that, because, you know, at conferences you often have talks on homework. How do we, you know, what about homework? And our approach is that if the task or the work, whatever they do in the EFL classroom, is so interesting to them and is so motivating to them, then it's work. And then it's more self-constructive work. You know, they construct their personality with whatever they do, and they carry it out. So we called this talk, it was like breaking the boundaries, you know, how it permeates the wall. The work of the school permeates the wall into the personal lives. And that is awesome, because then they just, you know, they get their friends together, they know experts in certain fields. Like parents had to drive, maybe for a city tour or something, the parents had to drive them around town so that they could film it. And then, you know, and that is awesome, because then it's not talking about homework, because that's not what we should be talking about. We should be talking about the work that the human being does, which is learning to create his or her own personality. And knowledge, of course, right?
Right. So it's really quite fascinating. I guess you've got a lot of good feedback then from parents that you know, see a change in their children, and I guess you use these materials as well in your own classroom, in your own teaching. So you observed these kind of positive impacts firsthand as well.
Yeah.
And this is something also that you encourage your trainee teachers that you're teaching to use also.
To use, exactly, right? Because often what I feel is the contextualization of whatever you do. I mean, for language, we're happy because with language, you can kind of cover each and every topic, right? But it has to be, again, close to the learners. And that's what that's the kind of a hidden hint in the material, is stay close to the learner. And because the kind of umbrella topics, they always give the learner some point where they can connect to, and then find the context and create their own context in what they do. Yeah. And that's what I try to kind of not hammer in, but it's something that I often repeat. That is important. Yeah, I think.
Do you ever find that it's difficult for young teachers to be comfortable with, or sorry, not young necessarily, but inexperienced teachers to be comfortable with that kind of approach? I'm just thinking back to, you know, very early days of my own classroom experiences, that might have been intimidating.
Yeah.
It had the potential, that kind of approach has the potential to be intimidating, possibly. Yeah. So how have you kind of addressed that?
It's when also like the university students, for example, when they observe. So I take them to our school and they observe teachers doing these projects, and then the feedback is how amazed they are, because it's probably the same. And no, might not be the same in Japan, but in Germany, students are already teaching early. And it's not the university or the educational program. It's because we have a lack of teachers and we need them at our schools. So in my course at the uni, which is autonomous language learning, of course, they usually, but the students, they work at regular schools. And so a couple of weeks ago, I had them there and they were, they really were surprised as how good the English was, and also about how the teacher spoke to the students, like giving choice, and control to the learners. I mean, a little bit, because in primary school, right, it's more, the choice is not as big. I mean, that of course you will widen the choice the older the students get. Yeah. And they loved watching it. But then, of course, when it is intimidating a little bit, because you see this process, it is still kind of in control of the teacher. The teacher knows exactly what he or she has to do and what's going to follow and so forth, and can really kind of steer the dynamics in the class. And I think that is something that as a new teacher, young teacher, you have to learn. It's experience. Yes. And you have to go through that. And that's what I tell them. Go through it. You write your lesson plans. You will see 7 minutes for that, 5 for that. You will do that for some time. It's important for you, for your own structure. But actually, after a while, we'll just kick them out. I mean, because it's the learn. Don't, get dictated. Have your lesson dictated by your lesson plan, that you thought how what the student might say, because that's what you don't have in the autonomous language classroom. That's nice. You don't have this part, for example. It's not, you don't have an expected student answer,
No. Yeah. No, I'm always interested how, inexperienced teachers kind of handle that aspect of autonomy with learners. Okay. So I'm mindful of your time. I don't want to keep you too long, but so now you've developed these resources, you've been using them, you've been kind of getting positive feedback on them. Like, what's the next direction for you? What's the next kind of thing that's lining up in your autonomous interest as something you're going to be pursuing?
Yeah. I think it's actually the competence part of the mini theory, like of the basic psychological needs. I think there's a lot of new insights we can get from going deeper into what does perceived competence mean. Like, I mean, it's been researched, but in the foreign language field, in connection to, let's say, extra linguistic skills, like these, what we said, hobbies, like not hobbies. I mean, that makes that too small. It's competences that the students have. So, and in the psychological way, how does it foster the language acquisition process in terms of giving the students a firm ground and confidence, which is very important, as we all know, for learning a new language. It's so that's definitely what I would like to look into.
All right. So perceived competence, right, and its role in kind of bridging that gap.
Yeah, how can we widen the field of competence in the foreign language classroom, instead of just focusing on 4 or 5, doesn't matter, however you want to call it, but that's going away, just writing, speaking, listening, reading. Just what do these skills really mean for learning?
Wonderful.
Because we say, when we say we use pre-knowledge, we have to use more pre-knowledge, I guess, with our students, or that they bring to the class. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's a nice place to leave it. Annika, thank you for a wonderful conversation. And I hope that was as interesting for you as it was for me.
Was, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Thomas. Bye-bye.